All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the I Am Podcast. My name is Aaron Morales, and today we're sponsored by Powerhouse Fitness and Fresh and Fuego, a meal prep company and the gym. So today we're here to talk about the 5 characteristics of a successful entrepreneur, or at least the 5 characteristics that I feel are important. Because, entrepreneurship is a big controversial topic that a lot of people have, especially for people that are in business already. Kind of seeing up and coming entrepreneurs. They don't really carry the same characteristics as someone that's been there a little bit more seasoned. So I kind of want to talk about what I feel is super important when it comes to entrepreneurship. The first characteristic that I want to start with is self-motivated. Being self-motivated, you have to have the ability to find a driving force within you and not rely on others. So kind of a personal example that I use is, when you wake up in the morning and there's those days where you don't feel like doing something, what is it that allows you to keep pushing? For me, for example, is I like to listen to music and find a song that gets me in the zone, puts my head where it needs to be at, and I can then, maintain a perspective of self-motivation as opposed to, waiting for the next person that I talk to that's doing something that I might want to be doing to, dump some motivation on me. So I feel like being self-motivated is a super important characteristic, because without that, you're always relying on the next person to get you to your next goal. The next one I feel is know how to take risks. All right. Part of being self-motivated is knowing how to take risks and when to take those risks. Because, if you're not going to take risk when you're opening up a business, then what exactly are you doing? You can't have everything calculated to the T. There's some stuff that you're just going to have to jump into the water and kind of figure out how to swim, so to say. You have to have the ability to just be willing to risk it all and lose it all. So what I mean by that is, if you have $10,000 and your business that you're starting is going to cost you $10,000 to start up, you got to be willing to lose that $10,000. It's like, oh, well, I have $10,000, but I'm only willing to lose 8 when the business calls for that whole 10. You know what I mean? So personal examples that I have are, when I opened up the first restaurant that I was a part of, which was Chop Shop, I maxed out all kinds of credit cards. I was probably in debt, I think about like $18,000 or $20,000, close to $18,000 or $20,000 in credit card debt. But to be honest, that didn't really faze me. It was just like, I always knew that I was going to figure out a way to make it happen. You know what I mean? Whether it was, the minimum payment that I needed to figure out just to maintain my credit score, whatever it was, but just the dream and the end result and the goal was so worth it that no matter the amount of risk I had to take, didn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Didn't affect the fact that, didn't affect the bigger picture, so to say. So the putting myself in this debt, I just knew that the end result for the Chop Shop was going to be successful. And unfortunately, just because of the way business was, falling out with my business partner, it didn't end up going that way. But I can look back and say that, hey, I put everything on the line that I had, and I was able to, take that risk. And I feel that's a big factor when it comes to being an entrepreneur. Because I have friends and clients that I talk to time and time again that are just like, well, I want to open up a business, but I'm too afraid of the risk. Well, part of opening up a business and being a business person is, in fact, taking risks. So if you're labeling yourself as an entrepreneur and you want to open up a business, theoretically you're, being contradictory to yourself, because one of the key components, what I feel like is for being an entrepreneur is being a risk taker. So sometimes the risks are going to fall in your favor and sometimes they're not. Kind of when I first started Powerhouse, I took a leap of faith back in November of I think it was 2012. I think 11 or 12. 2012. And I left LA Fitness and I went to go work at a private gym. And I just kind of, went on a free for all for lack of a better word, to move to a private training studio and bring my clients with me and hopes that I would, be able to self-sustain. I wasn't relying on a paycheck from LA Fitness. I had to, figure out how I was going to charge people, figure out how I was going to, maintain client retention, good rapport with people. And those are things that I worked on my own. But again, that's just the risk that you have to take if you want to take it to the next step, because my ultimate goal after leaving LA Fitness was to move on and eventually open up my own gym, increase income, increase credibility, something that I wasn't able to have while I was working at LA Fitness. So that ended up working out in my favor. But again, to take a leap of faith, have bills, have, at that time wasn't too crazy. Car payment, cell phone, insurance stuff. So not too many bills. But at the same token, someone who's 20, 21 years old, to take that leap of faith, and have those bills and, in hopes that things are going to work out when you make that move is definitely a risk in itself. So it's something you have to be comfortable with. So I was fortunate enough after taking that risk over to move on to which was Formula Fitness, was a small personal training gym that eventually took on another risk, which was taking over a small location, which I started the first Powerhouse. So in that situation, those risks panned out and ended up working out in my favor. And lastly, the most recent risk that I kind of wanted to talk about, because I feel risk is such an important factor when it comes to entrepreneurship, is recently with the Fresh and Fuego, the meal prep company that I just started with Joseph, which is my business partner. So that is a risk in itself, in the sense that, we had some meal prep companies here before that we were working with, and things just didn't turn out the way I wanted them to. They were individually contracted from the outside, but I felt that I ended up troubleshooting a lot of the issues that were brought on by the other meal prep companies, whether it was, figuring out mishaps in orders, whether it was, payment issues, food coming out not to the quality that they wanted it. So I felt that it was, only appropriate that I come out with my own meal prep company that we can utilize alongside Powerhouse, and that was Fresh and Fuego. But to start that was a risk in itself. It's like, to build out a kitchen, to hire a staff, we're easily in right now close to I want to say $16,000, and we're still breaking even. So it's not like I'm seeing any money off of that. It's just kind of turning the wheels, and that's just a risk that you take, granted, because, there's a lot of other things that we could do with $16,000, other moves that we can make. But I felt that this was a calculated move and something that was appropriate for the next step in my business venture. So it was something that, I calculated, and I felt that, like I said, was only appropriate. But you have to, get the wheels spinning. Like I said before, you have to hire on the staff, the build out. So, the electrical stuff, the plumbing, refrigerators, all those things are just part of the startup. And, purchasing those things, other than besides the use of Fresh and Fuego, there's real no use for that anywhere else. It's not like I can go take this big, 2-compartment industrial fridge and put it inside, somebody's house. There's really no value after that. So the point I'm trying to make with that is just, it's such a huge risk that you take on when you open any business, but you have to be so passionate and have things detailed and laid out that, is not going to allow you to fail. There's going to be constant roadblocks in entrepreneurship. You're always going to have obstacles that you're going to have to overcome. And I want to touch on Fresh and Fuego again, is because when we first opened up this company, it was like, all right, I'm just here waiting for the first thing to go wrong. There's something that, just being in business, something has to go wrong in order for it to feel right. And I know that sounds, kind of, contradictive, but that's how you know that you're taking the next step forward, because you're troubleshooting, right? After risk taking, you take that initial risk and then you have to troubleshoot. So one of the second key characteristic that I feel with being a successful entrepreneur is the risk taking factor. Third is, I want to touch on the sickening work ethic, and I know that kind of sounds a little crazy, but you have to be willing to work, and pour yourself into your business. That's the only way I feel you're really going to be successful. Because if you only work when you feel like it, you're not going to have the result that you want. Personally, I feel more motivated and I feel more in tune with my business and myself when I work, when I know other people aren't working. So an example about that is the Super Bowl has just recently passed. And, I worked on the Super Bowl, delivering meals. I came in to train for a little bit, jumped on the computer answering emails. But I know that when the majority of people are resting and I'm working, I feel, whether or not it's true, I feel that I'm a step ahead. And to me, that brings comfort in what I'm doing, because I feel that, I like to stay a step ahead of the competition. And to me, that's just like a self-motivating factor. So going back to the first characteristic, working when others aren't working, or when I see them posting about other things, just brings me that, self-satisfaction to keep on pushing, to go hard, because you have to have that work ethic. You have to be, like I said before, willing to work when others aren't working, willing to work, 12, 16-hour days, willing to stay up overnight, whatever business or field that you're in, whether it be, fitness or, I work alongside with Emilio and Anthony. And sometimes I know dealing with people in those fields that a creative touch will come, at, 12 o'clock at night. So you have to be willing to, get up and, do what you need to do, whether it's, write down some music, write down some lyrics, edit, so whatever the case may be, even when you don't feel like doing it, you have to be willing to put in that work, because that's just, a very vital characteristic of, entrepreneur. The fourth one is the ability to lead from the front. So a lot of times when people, what's the word I'm looking for? When people come into a position of authority, it's real easy to dictate and, delegate work with no sense of direction to your employees or to your team members. But I feel it's only appropriate that if you're going to be a solid leader and someone that's going to be respected and your business is going to do well, your employees or your team members have to see you in the front doing exactly, what you're telling them to do. At least doesn't have to be for a long duration of time, but at least in the forefront when you're teaching and coaching, that you should be willing to cover all aspects of your business, whether it's the financials, whether it's the marketing, the training portion. I'm giving examples based off my business, but I'm never going to tell someone to do something that I've never done. Just because personally I don't feel it's right and it's correct or it's even appropriate, because how should I expect the standard to be set if I can't even do it myself? So the ability to lead from the front is super important, and not just, gloat about, the success factor or the fame and the glam that you get from being labeled as an entrepreneur. Because I feel a lot of times people get lost in that and they lose the ability to, put themselves in the trenches, put their head down and continue to work, because of the title entrepreneur just has some type of, glorified meaning behind it. So I feel like, when you're a solid entrepreneur, you really know how to lead from the front, because, your team relies on you. When you have a team and they should have that leader that they go to, or that coach that they go to, the mentor that they go to answer any questions that they may have, so they can better do their job and better, contribute and be a important component to your business. Lastly, I wanted to talk about, basic money management skills. So when you come into business and entrepreneurship, a lot of times people feel, or kind of the people that I've talked to or certain experiences I've had, people have a great idea and they know how they're going to get things done, but they really have no sense of financials on how they're going to go about things. So when it comes to, let's just say opening a gym, for example, I was at LA Fitness on, I believe, LA Fitness and Diamond Bar, I believe, a couple days ago. And I met this guy, was working out. He stopped me, and it's one thing that I really don't like to just to put out there, like, oh, I'm a business owner, this, that, and the other, because I feel people get this false perception of me. And I just like, I wait for people to ask, even if they do ask, before I tell them what I do. Conversation started, and we were bullshitting a little bit. And he talks about how he's going to come into some money. He was in a car accident, and that, he's like, oh, I want to open up a gym too. I'm like, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that story, that people want to, oh, I'm coming into this money, I want to open up a business. And it's just like, okay, cool. I'll never shoot anybody down, because, I can't remember the countless times I've gotten shit from people when I first wanted to open up a business. Granted, my money management skills now are a lot further advanced than they were back when I was 20 or 21. But he said that he's coming into around $5,000 or $10,000, and just based off basic money management skills or business knowledge, I don't know what type of gym he was going to open for $5,000 or $10,000. And that just goes to show that fifth characteristic, that key component, is something that you really need to be groomed with, because if you don't know how much your business is going to cost, or you don't have like a profit and loss when you're in business, or those analytics or those financials that you need to start a business, you're going to be completely thrown off course. Because you can have a great idea, but if you can't fund it, or you can't, see it through, then, you really don't have a business at all. And I feel that entrepreneurs, as much of being brainstormers and, idea thinkers, or whatever you want to call it, need to have a solid foundation when it comes to money management skills. Because if you're going to grow and scale, and bring on employees, you have to figure out payroll. You have to figure out how you're going to get all your overhead paid, and you still want to pay yourself. For the longest time, in my personal business, we're just funneling everything back into businesses and not really seeing a paycheck for ourselves. But it wasn't until recent that, we really started to delegate certain things. And, I kind of got behind the financials, and it was like, okay, I felt it was only right to start paying us now, because otherwise, if you're not making any money, granted, I want to rewind a little bit. The reason why we weren't taking paychecks was just everything was funneling into the gym, and I had us on a course to open up the second location, which we did. So that was the goal in mind. So there was a reason why we weren't taking a paycheck and just funneling everything back in, because we had that second location in mind, and we're adding on employees. So we were growing our business first, but at the same token, now we're in a different position. It's a shift change, and now we are taking a little bit more of a paycheck, because we want to, reap the benefits of our labor, so to say, and not just have this business that we keep growing, but we're never seeing anything from it. So I feel that's another challenge when it comes to money management skills, is being able to pay yourself out and self-sustain within your business while still being able to grow. And I feel that takes a lot of practice and talent, because I know a lot of business owners that, they spend, but they really don't have anything in reserves. So that's something that, I've had to constantly work on myself. And these things that I've mentioned, the self-motivated, the know how to take risks, the sickening work ethic, the ability to lead from the front, and the money management skills are something that I hold dear to myself, because I feel that's what I've worked on the most, these 5 components, to get me to where I'm at. And by no means am I anywhere near where I want to be. But granted, the things that I've personally accomplished, I just like to share my experiences and what's worked for me, and what characteristics that I hold true to myself. And these have been, the 5 key components that have really helped me blossom to where I'm at today, and my team blossom to where I'm at. Because I think we do a really good job over here in the other businesses that I've been a part of. And I've noticed that when I've lacked in these certain areas, that things didn't pan out the way that I wanted them to. So whenever, business is not going in the direction that I wanted to, I always kind of reflect back to, okay, am I maintaining a self-motivation? Am I taking the right risks? Because, in business, once you take that big major risk, you get sometimes complacent or you're happy with where you're at. But that key component, risk taker, when it comes to entrepreneurs, that's its like, backbone right there. How are you going to keep, as an entrepreneur, you should be constantly trying to acquire and, move forward. And that is, goes hand in hand with taking risks. You can't do that unless you're taking risks. So I notice when my business is stagnant, or if I'm not happy with where I'm at, I'm like, okay, am I taking any calculated risk? Because there's a difference between taking a risk and then taking a calculated risk. So every move that I make I play out in my head. It's not like, oh, hey, this move that I'm about to make, it seems like a good idea. There has to be, numbers behind it. I have to have, if I take that risk, what's the next step? And I have like 3 different avenues that I could take. How's this going to affect the people around me? So there's a lot of components that you have to pay attention to, because I keep going back to that risk taker, because I think that's one of the most vital and key characteristics of the entrepreneur, along with the others. But like I said, guys, self-motivated, know how to take risks, sickening work ethic, ability to lead from the front, and money management skills are 5 key characteristics that any new entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that are already having or already own businesses or are part of businesses that are trying to take it to the next level. I feel that these have helped me the most, and I'm going to continue to implement them in my businesses and what I do in my daily practice. So yeah, guys, want to touch on these 5 characteristics. This is the I Am Podcast. If you have any other questions, leave them in the comments section on YouTube. So go follow us on iTunes, Spotify. It's I Am AMM Podcast. Like I said, iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. We're going to be launching stuff weekly. So I'll be going over questions that people leave on there, things that I feel are important to talk about. So go ahead, comment, subscribe, like, whatever you got to do. Just show some love.